Good morning. I'm so glad you decided to make the garden a part of your day here on Father's Day. And it is Father's Day, and you probably have realized that Father's Day doesn't really get the hype, the same kind of hype, at least, that Mother's Day typically does. And we here at the garden try to kind of be, I guess you might say, more generic on Mother's Day and Father's Day, because we know not everybody falls into those roles, even though we all had a mother or a father of one form or another. And so everything we said on Mother's Day applies to Father's Day and more broadly as well. I can't remember what it was, so maybe you do. But also, we try to think about something that applies to all of us. And so this morning we want to focus on relationships. Our relationships at home, our relationships at work, at school, at play, wherever we might happen to be, and how we go about having good, healthy, quality relationships. I consulted a number of experts who supposedly know all about relationships, and so I looked at what they had to say, and after a while it seemed like they were all saying pretty much the same thing. I have my own ideas, my own thoughts, and so I've picked out what I thought were probably the top characteristics about relationships. Knowing we were going to talk about that, I was looking for a Bible passage that would get us started in this way. And I came upon a proverb. Now, we've talked about the book of Proverbs before. This is a collection in the wisdom tradition. And it's said to be instructions and teachings from the wise people in that particular society. Often they have to do with the raising of children, but not solely. They are these gems of wisdom that help us live our lives a little bit better if we but heed them. And so this passage is from Proverbs 24. This is how it reads. It takes wisdom to build a house, an understanding to set it on a firm foundation. It takes knowledge to furnish its rooms with fine furniture and beautiful draperies. Now, at face value, we could probably say this is about building a house and decorating it. But it's way deeper than that, it seems to me. It's talking about some of the things we have to have, yes, to build a house, but also to build a home. And that is wisdom and understanding and knowledge. And so I want us to think about the foundation for good relationships. What is it that's absolutely essential for our relationships to be solid and firm? It seems to me that one of the most important things is building trust. Trust is a matter, we talk about trust with God, and our faith is about leaning one's whole weight on. It's someone that lives up to his or her character, someone who makes a promise and keeps that promise, who does what he or she says they're going to do. And it's important that we build that kind of trust. And it has to be consistent. It's not just a one-time thing. It takes time and energy and effort to build that trust. And it only takes one slip to break the trust. And then we have to start all over again to rebuild it. And it takes time and energy and effort to rebuild it. And so trust is probably one of the most priceless things. And we need it in every relationship. If we don't have the trust in a friendship or in a family member, then we probably really don't have what I would call a quality relationship. It takes that kind of trust to engender respect for one another. Respect is simply being able to honor the person the other one is, to see their gifts and abilities, to honor their worth and dignity there. And respect shows itself in a myriad of little things. Things like saying please and thank you, being polite, those little common courtesies that can make such a huge difference. And that's at home as well as everywhere else too. And so it's important to show those common courtesies and to make sure that we monitor our speech, that we never do anything that belittles or demeans another person, or that in any way get engaged in name calling, because that chips away at someone's self-esteem and it can destroy a relationship. So it's really important to always be as affirming as we possibly can, to encourage and to support and to praise another. Of course, we have to be sincere. We have to do it honestly. But praise and affirmation build people up, where criticism kind of break people down and can break spirits as well. Now, I'm well aware that there are times, whether we're involved in child rearing or some other endeavor, that correctives are needed. And so it's important that we always think carefully about how we deliver that we make sure we do it kindly and lovingly and in as positive a way as we possibly can. It's just simply something that is a part of every relationship. Of course, we don't have a relationship at all if we don't spend time together. And I think it's really more about quality of time than quantity, although both really count. It doesn't mean sitting side by side on our own electronics. That doesn't. Good quality time has to be interactive time. Sometimes that can be playing ball with our kids, or going for a bike ride and chatting along the way, or maybe it's packing a picnic lunch and getting away from everything else and just going and being together and talking and ruminating and thinking about all kinds of things. Sometimes it can even happen in the car. I recall our daughter's growing up days, and we didn't have cell phones then. And I really cherished the fact that when we were in the car, you could turn the music off and just talk. And it's amazing what you can learn about one another. So it needs to be interactive. It needs to be where we really do communicate with one another and share with one another. There's another thing that's really important in every relationship, and that's being able to forgive. We've talked about this before, in fact, mentioned it a little bit last week. Sometimes if I am invited to officiate at a wedding ceremony and am invited to say a few words, some thoughts, a reflection, I will almost always talk about forgiveness because I think that's an essential in a relationship. And sometimes I use the phrase by Lewis Smedes in his book on forgiveness that says, forgiveness fits faulty people. The reality is we are all faulty people. We all make mistakes. We say the wrong thing. We do the wrong thing. We even hurt the people we profess to love the most. And so it's important that we have the ability to forgive and to accept and receive forgiveness. And there's another side to that as well. It's not just about doing something wrong and then letting the other person forgive us. It's about humbling ourselves to be able to say, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean that. I wish I hadn't said that. You know, sometimes we hurt one another inadvertently. Sometimes we're fairly deliberate about it. And so it's always important to be aware, to be cognizant of what's going on, and then to offer our apology and to mean it, to really mean it, because then forgiveness can truly happen. And I think forgiveness is the greatest gift of love we can ever experience. Some of these things I've talked about are really based on acquiring good communication skills. And there's two sides to that as well. Part of it is about being able to express ourselves as clearly as we possibly can. We can't assume that anybody else understands what's going on in our minds or in our hearts. We have to be able to express it and to be as clear and offer as much clarification as we can. The other side of that, of course, is listening intently. We have to listen carefully and try to really hear what's being said to the best of our ability and make sure we ask for clarification. Now, I suppose you might call me old school, but I think that really is best when we have that face-to-face human interaction. There's something really flat about emails or texts or even letters for that matter, because we can't see facial expressions, we can't hear the intonation of voice. And so all of those things go together to create good communication. So it's really important, I think, that we do spend that quality time and we make sure that we communicate as well as we possibly can. Inevitably, in every relationship, there are disagreements, there are differences of opinion. Sometimes there's even anger in the midst of that. And I think that it's important that we learn not to speak in the heat of anger, because sometimes we say things that we shouldn't say. We say things that we really don't mean, and they can be extremely hurtful. And once they're out of our mouths, we cannot take them back. So it's a matter of trying to diffuse that anger in whatever way works for us. Sometimes it's getting some time and space. Sometimes it's counting to 10. Whatever it is, it's being aware of that anger and trying to let go of it. And then if we really have a good, loving relationship, It's not about winning and saying who's right. It's about a win-win thing, not a win-lose kind of situation. And that may mean that each person has to give a little and come together a little bit more toward the middle here and try to find something that works for everyone here. It's about often compromise and being able to work something out that everybody can live with. And we do that because we care, because we truly love one another. If we can practice all those things we've talked about, it seems to me that we're creating the right kind of environment. And I do believe it begins at home. And that's a safe environment. Don't we all want a place that is safe for us to be ourselves, to share who we are, to share our hopes and dreams and our fears? And we can only do that if we create the strongest relationships possible and really develop those good communication and conflict management skills that can make a huge difference for us. There's something I think we need to realize as we move our way through life, and that is relationships change over time. We all go through seasons of our lives, and it's important to acknowledge that. We don't parent a child the same way we relate to an adult, a child who's become an adult. And I've certainly seen that with our daughter as she has gone from childhood to adolescence and now to having a home of her own and a family of her own. I think we still have a good relationship, but it's definitely different than it ever was before. And it's important to recognize that and to honor that. And if we can, and if we do, it can enrich our lives and the lives of others just in an incredible way. And I think in that regard, thinking about how we change and how we grow and evolve in the various seasons of life, sometimes that means we have to allow space in our relationships so that people can begin to understand a little bit more of who they are and what they're about. And then when they come into the relationship, having explored that a little bit more, there can be some newness in it. And we have to adapt to it. Nothing stays the same. Things are constantly in process of change and evolving, and we need to be aware of that and allow that to come in and realize that we're on this incredible adventure. Every relationship is an adventure and goes through various highs and lows and all of those kinds of things. So we need to be open to that possibility and to constantly keep trying to do our best to understand where we are in that relationship. And then there's one other thing that I didn't see anybody really mention, but I'll throw it in. It helps if they're fun. It helps to have fun at home. It helps to be able to laugh, to have a good sense of humor, to lighten things, to lighten the stress sometimes, to lift our spirits. And that's, I think, a really positive thing and says a lot about relationships if we're that kind of person and can have that kind of relationship. Well, for the most part, there you have it. Some of the thoughts of the experts and some of mine thrown in there for whatever they're worth. And especially, I suppose, if we're actively in the process of raising children, maybe they make a little bit more sense. There's another proverb that might be helpful for us today. It says this: point your kids in the right direction. When they're old, they won't get lost. Well, isn't that what we all hope for?